Mel Gibson makes a shocking recasting of the entire ensemble for his Passion sequel, and the Marvel star makes a new push for a standalone movie, and African cinema celebrates a major milestone. We are covering the breakthroughs, the campaigns, and the surprises right here on the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. Stay tuned. Hello, film fans, and thanks for joining me for this episode. And this episode is news packed, starting with the story of one of the most anticipated sequels of all time. And I'm talking about none other than Mel Gibson's The Resurrection of the Christ, following after almost 20 years after the release of The Passion of the Christ in 2004. And as I introduced in this particular episode, Mel Gibson has made a surprising turn by recasting the entire ensemble of the Passion of the sequel, Passion of the Christ sequel, and that is the Resurrection of the Christ, even including the lead, that is Jim Caviezel, with a relatively unknown Finnish actor. When we'll be shifting from that to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where Hulk star Mark Ruffalo is making a new push for a potential solo Hulk movie. Well, will that happen? Well, we don't know. We'll be delving into that story and see whether that is even possible. And also, we'll be making a shift to the African front, where African cinema has made a major breakthrough on in celebrating a new milestone with regards to the film The Head by an actor-turned director for his new film titled The Head. So we'll be delving into all these stories right here on the Film Mandate. So let's delve right into the very first story, and that is the Passion of the Christ sequel, and that is the Resurrection of the Christ. And 20 years after the release of this film, The Passion of the Christ, we are finally getting a go on the sequel to The Passion of the Christ that Mel Gibson has over the years mentioned that he wants to do it. And finally, not only is it happening, but actually they are shooting it right now as we speak. But what came as a surprise was the fact that the entire ensemble of the Passion of the Christ have been recast due to reasons that actually make sense if you understand the reason why. And for that case, let's just take a brief read of an article published in the Variety newspaper stating why that is the case. So we go on to the Variety website, and this is what the article has to say: that Mel Gibson's Resurrection of the Christ finds new Jesus and Mary Magdalene in Jaakko, Ohtonen, and Mariela Garriga reveals main cast. And these are the two who will be playing Jesus and Mary Magdalene respectively. And so let's take a quick read at this article. It says that Mel Gibson's The Resurrection of the Christ is long delayed follow-up to 2004's The Passion of the Christ has cast Finnish actor Jaakko Ohtonen, The Last Kingdom, in the role of Jesus, replacing original star Jim Caviezel. The shooting started last week at Rome's Cinecittà Studios on the film, with its main ensemble having been entirely recast. More than 20 years ago, Gibson shot the original Passion of the Christ at Cinecittà, which became one of the largest grossing independent films of all time, with a worldwide box office of $610 million. As previously announced, The Passion of the Christ will be split into two films, with each part set to release in 2027. So that is quite an exciting news, having realized that the film actually has begun shooting already. And this came as a surprise because, I mean, not a shooting, but a recasting, because prior to um, discovering this, we all heard of the potential return of Jim Caviezel as Jesus, citing the potential use of de-aging technology to render him back to look as young as he was when he shot the 2024 film. But then, when I even read the article, I must admit it did escape me that if you are to de-age Jim Caviezel, not only would you have to de-age him, but de-age all the other characters who are perhaps major players in the film, seeing that the resurrection of Christ actually happens 3 days after he was crucified and buried. So in that case, if you're bringing back the actors, they would literally have to look almost the same as they shot as I mean they appeared in the 21 year ago film released in 2004, and that is quite interesting to see. But then the issue would then mean that to re to re to recast or to have all these actors reprise their roles, and not only that, but to also have them de-aged to that particular age where it will be almost the same as the one they had. I mean, as the same age they started in prior in the Passion of the Christ will mean spending a lot of money on just that de-aging technology, which would not make monetarily sense, which wouldn't be a wise decision. So in that case, they had to recast all the actors just to, give it a fresh take and to also beat down the production cost, which actually makes sense. And that was one of the reasons that a studio insider whose name has not been mentioned actually made known to the public that this is the reason why they are not having the old actors reprising their roles, be it Jim Caviezel for Jesus or Monica Bellucci for Mary Magdalene. So it does make business sense, a more wise business sense to recast an entire ensemble for this production. So I can understand that, and it is quite interesting. So for this particular sequel, they are still shooting it at this almost the same place that the first one was shot. And Mel Gibson is already hard working on this particular production for its potential 2027 release. And note that this film will be split into two: the resurrection of Christ. And the amazing strategy of this entire film is to have the first film, the first part of the resurrection of Christ, actually released on March 26, 2027, and that is Good Friday, the day of his resurrection, and then have the second part released 40 days later, exactly falling exactly on May 6, 2027, which Christians refer to as Ascension Day. So that is quite an interesting strategy in releasing these films, and I think it's in the right spirit of this particular film. And Gibson's vision, he actually wrote this together with his brother Donald and a returning scribe of his that he worked with on the film Braveheart, that is Randall Wallace. And Randall Wallace they've together penned this script together. And Mel Gibson has stated that this is quite an asset trip of a film that will be made, citing that the script is one of the best he has ever read, even though he was part of writing the script. But I'm sure Randall Wallace would have further evolved the script from the initial concept that they had till now. So that is quite an interesting development or revelation in regards to how good of a story this would be. And therefore, I can assume that he's putting all his best into producing this movie. And that is quite interesting, to see. For him to have stated that this is a script that he has never, it's nothing like he's never read anything like that, means that it comes highly, with a high regard to the material that he has worked on. And obviously, Mel Gibson is not just any other director, but he is an Academy Award winner in terms of directing, and definitely would be putting all his best in this particular production for the release date in 2027. So it is quite an interesting story to discover, seeing that after 20 something years, there's the sequel to one of the most highly grossing independent film, which made over $610 million globally, is going to be made, and that is quite exciting. And most often than not, you don't really receive or get sequels for biblical or faith-based stories like that of Jesus, and and every with regards to everyone surrounding him, and then how the aftermath of his death evolved. Most often than not, you always have these story end up with him being crucified on the cross and resurrecting, and that ends it. But finally, we are getting a fresh take, seeing that the cast are different, into to see the aftermath of the crucifixion on the cross and the rising from the tomb. So that'd be quite interesting to see. So let me know what you think with regards to this particular development, on whether you are surprised by the full cast as cited in the Passion of the Christ sequel, which is the Resurrection of the Christ, particularly being replaced, Jim Caviezel being replaced by this young Finnish actor who is 36 years old. Are you surprised by it? Is it the right move, or should Gibson have just used the Asian technology to bring Jim Caviezel back? Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below. So moving on from the Mel Gibson story of the Passion of the Christ sequel, that is the Resurrection of the Christ, we move to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And one of the most exciting stories, I mean, in terms of the film landscape globally, is when finally, having watched Iron Man 1, and then I think we end up in Iron Man 2, and then right after watching the entire film of Incredible Hulk, which actually at the time starred Edward Norton, we had Tony Stark, that is Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, show up in the end credits of the Incredible Hulk to meet Thunderbolt Ross and say to him that, I heard you have a green problem. And that was quite exciting, finally seeing that these films are going to cross over. And that was one of the most exciting times, in cinematic history. Well, 15 or almost 20 years down the line, all these movies have crossed over with almost all even including Black Widow in the Avengers Assemble, have received their solo film. Unfortunately, that of the Hulk has not received anyone yet, apart from the very first one that starred Ed Norton. Well, in an interview with GQ magazine, Mark Ruffalo was asked a question again on his, on what this whole Hulk thing is about. And well, he's always expressed interest in having a solo Hulk movie, but then he also expressed concern whether that can even happen at all. Well, let's take a quick read at the Movie Web website concerning what he had to say. So it says that MCU star still wants a standalone movie for his character. It's not really owned by Marvel, and that is what he had to say. So the article says that Mark Ruffalo, the performer responsible for playing the Hulk in the MCU, says he'd love to make a movie about the character outside the constraints of the franchise. The Hulk has been adapted for the screen numerous times, with several different actors giving life to the character, powered by gamma radiation enhanced rage. Although Ruffalo's performance has come in service of the big screen incarnation, people remember the most. The future is looking grim for his solo movie projects. Nevertheless, Ruffalo's still hopeful. And this is what he had to say. The four-time Academy Award nominee recently spoke to GQ via YouTube for an extensive retrospective of his long career. Let me just move straight to what he had to say. So this is what he has to say. Yeah, I'd love to have a solo Hulk movie. I don't know if you know the story of that, but it's not really owned by Marvel. It's a Universal property. I don't know if it will really, it's ever really gonna come to be. Honestly, we keep talking about it, what it would be. There's been so many Hulk movies already. It's like, does anyone really want another one? But I love one, and I do think the audiences would be into it if we could crack the nut of it. So there you have it. Mark Ruffalo is still interested in starring in a solo Hulk film. And it looks like, yes, he wants to star in it, but the likelihood for Marvel to go ahead and make a Hulk movie seems to be slim, very, very slim, and potentially may never even happen. And this has to do with the fact that Universal owns the distribution right to the Hulk movie, whereas Marvel though can make it. And most often than not, for Mark Ruffalo to have said that Universal actually owns it, it does make sense because most often the one who controls the distribution rights for a film actually has more say as to how the film will be seen in the cinemas or yeah in the cinemas. So it then means that whoever has a distribution right to a property actually controls how things can be done. And even though they own the distribution rights to the Hulk film, that is, if a Hulk film is ever made, they do not have control as to which films the Hulk can be used in, provided it is not a standalone movie for the Hulk itself. So that has been the challenge. And we ask ourselves, how come that they cannot come to an agreement? Well, I do not know the entire details as to why this is the issue, but I think if cooler heads can prevail one way or the other, I'm not saying they are at loggerheads at each other, but for lack of a better expression, if cooler heads can prevail, I think they can potentially strike a similar deal that Marvel has with Sony to be able to use the, you know, Spider-Man characters in the MCU, but at the same time have a say as to how Sony's film can be made. But it's still a little different because Sony still owns the right to Spider-Man, and they still can determine. I mean, they still own how to distribute the solo Spider-Man films, but in agreement or in partnership with Marvel. So one way or the other, I believe that once they've been able to work out a deal with Sony, in order to make a film like the Spider-Man trilogy, then it's very possible that they can do something similar with the the Incredible Hulk. And I think more than ever, to get a solo Hulk movie would be much more appropriate or needed, seeing that getting to the latter parts of one of the phases, the Hulk was literally muted, or for lack of a better word, the Hulk was not the one that most people are familiar with. And he sort of have been so depowered to an extent that it seems even unrecognizable from what we have in the comics. That is not to say there is no Professor Hulk in the comics, there is, but one that can really stand on its own and be quite a force of nature in the MCU is the Rage Hulk that actually is the most prominent one known in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or in the comic book universe. Let me put it that way, in the comic book universe. So that is quite sad that after all these years, we are still in that, waters where a solo horror film can't be made, even though we've had, solo films for all these other actors. I mean, all the other characters in the Marvel, in the Avengers team, with the exception of Hawkeye, who has a series a series instead of a film. But that will be quite interesting if they can work out a deal, and I'm sure most of us will be very excited to see, the raging green monster back on screen the way was originally portrayed in the Avengers, in the first Avengers film, and that is something exciting that we'll all be happy about. Well, as to whether that is going to happen or not, that will depend on the executive brass of both studios to come to an agreement that is mutually beneficial for the both of them. So let me know what you think with regards to this particular story. Do you think this can potentially happen, whether we can have a potential solo Hulk film? And what villain or storyline would you want to see in a standalone, Smart Hulk movie? Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below. So now we'll move on to our last story of the day, and that has to do with the African cinema. And most often than not, a lot of the challenges we face has to do with our films not really being, so visible on the world stage. And not just that, but more importantly, telling stories with wider range. To an extent we have, but most often most of those stories are a little bit conservative in nature, if I'm to express it that way. We wade in the waters of drama or mysticism, as Africans are said to be highly spiritual, and love stories and comedy. But well, a new film is on the block, and it is exciting to see the filmmakers going into certain territories that usually is not the norm of films that are quite often made on the continent. And I'm talking about none other film than The Head, which is captured in the Guardian, the Guardian website, a Nigerian website that reports on movies. So let's take a quick read at that. So The Head, a new milestone for African cinema. The much anticipated drama, The Head, officially hits cinemas nationwide today. So this film was actually screened over the weekend. I think the premiere date was on the 17th. So it has already premiered. And there is a team of those behind the scenes, and also those who starred in it as well. So we read, the much anticipated drama, The Head, officially hits cinemas nationwide today, making a new milestone in African storytelling. Following its star-studded premiere earlier this week, the film is already being hailed as one of the year's most daring and thought-provoking releases. Beyond its gripping plot and stellar cast lies the vision of two executive producers who see filmmaking not just as art, but as a strategic investment in the future of African cinema. Produced by Efe Ejukolem, founder Airspace, Chukwudi Ulogo, founder Serendipity HHC, Film One Studios, and Tori Tori Films, the project stands out for its innovation and business-minded approach. For Efe, The Head is more than an artistic triumph. It's a step toward positioning African cinema as an asset class that blends culture and commerce. Financing the film wasn't just about making a movie, it was about proving that films can tell the Nigerian story, deal with societal issues, and drive global visibility. Efe said, Chukwudi, whose background lies in health and enterprise, sees the project as a model for creative investment. And this is what excites me about this whole article. It says that we are building a structure where film and business coexist, where creativity meets capital and delivers measurable impact, he noted. Set in a fictional Nigerian community, The Head explores love, betrayal, and resilience, echoing the real-life struggles of African societies today. But what truly sets it apart is its production philosophy. Africa doesn't lack stories. It lacks authentic storytelling with excellent execution. Chukwudi emphasized, The Head is our response to that gap. As the film opens across Nigeria, one thing is clear: the head isn't just a movie; it's a movement redefining what it means to invest in African stories. So that is quite an interesting article that has been written. I have actually viewed the trailer, and I must admit, it is very chilling. Seeing that some of the stories that they cover in this particular film are issues that are still happening on the continent or in the country, to be specific. Genocides and kidnappings are quite rampant in the Nigerian country, and I'm glad one way or the other, film is not just being a place to escape to, but also to reflect or to sort of turn back the mirror onto society and tell them that this is what is happening and whether that is the right thing to continue to do. So it is a film being used as a means to address some of the societal challenges that are faced on the, in the country of Nigeria, but I must even dare say on the continent of Africa, or even reflective of what may be happening in other parts of the world as well. And that is quite a dare to do. That's not to say that there haven't been any other films that have not done, that have not captured such things in particular. Some have been done in time past. But I think this is very pertinent, seeing what is transpiring, particularly in the country of Nigeria. And that I must say, is quite a bold effort on the part of the filmmakers to pursue such subject matter for their stories. And I like the aspect of understanding that film is not just to entertain, but also to make a positive social change. And that is what they are doing as well. But one of the things that excites me is the fact that key to it all should be the fact that films is not just an art, but it's also a business, because if film just remains in the purview or the domain of an art without also balancing it well with commerce, the likelihood for a sequel or for the craft to be continued would be next to nothing, because film is a business, and after investing in the film, you hope to recoup the investment to be able to continue in making those films. And I feel like with the team up of these film studios together to make this film, indeed shows how serious they are in balancing both acts. And it looks like a lot of Nigerian filmmakers are understanding the need for collaboration, the need for team up in doing a film, and I like that aspect. And most Nigerian film studios or film companies actually have also come into the field with specialization. Some financing, others also focusing on distribution, and so many others. So I'm excited that they are embarking on this journey to ensure that the film does not just stay within the terrain of Nigeria, but can spread or should spread as wide as possible, not just on the continent, but on the global stage. And that is where the business aspects come to play. As usual, just as they have said, Africa doesn't lack stories. What we lack is sometimes the ability to be seen worldwide. And as to particularly in this year, a lot of African films are being nicely told in terms of how it is captured. Every aspect of the production indeed seems very good. So even now, even though we are still working and evolving in our art form to provide high production value for the films that we make on the continent, what we lack the most is the ability to be able to have these films travel far and wide, all over the world. And that is where we lack that resources. And to have companies like these team up means that they know what the power of team up can do for a business like the film business. And I'm excited about that. And Hopefully, I don't know, this is just the opening weekend, and I should even think that it may be screening in certain selected cinemas across Africa. But I'm hoping that such films, or not just this film alone, but African films in general, will get the opportunity to travel far and wide beyond the scope of this continent for people to see what we have to offer in terms of storytelling. So that is quite exciting, and congratulations to these filmmakers who have dared to tell stories that are quite sensitive and that is actually pertinent in their culture or in their country, which also plays certain parts of Africa and the world, and also be business minded about it and ensuring that they are able to recoup their money and keep the art of filmmaking going. So that is quite exciting to see here. So let me know what you think with regards to this particular story. Do you think that with the recent African film or series, that are happening now, is it engaging enough? Is it riveting enough to capture your attention? And also, let me know what you think, whether these stories are important to be told for a global audience. Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below. And this wraps up my three stories for the day. But I'm not done, because having returned from the weekend, you will definitely want to know how much or how many films actually did make enough money at the global box office. So we delve into the next part of this episode, and that has to do with the box office receipts of the films that screened over the weekend, starting with the North American box office from the Box Office Mojo chart. We delve into the top 10 films that grossed some money over the weekend, and we start with Black Phone 2, that stars Ethan Hawke, and it has made $26.5 million in its first opening. Dropping from number 1 to number 2, we have Tron Ares, which has made $11,140,000, and the total domestic is $54,578,812. Opening for the very first time at number 3 is Good Fortune, which has made $6.2 million. Dropping from number 3 to number 4, we have One Battle After Another, and it made $4 million this weekend, and a total North American box office of $61,909,464. And number 5, dropping from number 2, is Roofman, starring Channing Tatum, and it has made $3.7 million this weekend, and a total domestic box office of $15,516,460. And number 6, we have Truth and Treason, opening for the very first time, and it has made $2,721,265. And number 7, dropping from number 4, is Gabby's Dollhouse, the movie, and it has made $1,650,000 and a total domestic of $29,930,815. And number 9 dropping number 8 dropping from number 5, we have The Conjuring Last Rites, and it has made $1,571,000 and a total domestic of $175,439,735. This year seems to be the year for the horror genre of films. Also, at number 9, dropping from number 20, actually moving up from number 20 instead, is After the Hunt, which has made $1,555,956, and this rises as a result of adding more cinemas to its initial release. So the total domestic so far is $1,772,751, and that is an Amazon MGM Studios release, quite a limited release. And last but not the least is the faith-based film at number 10, dropping from number 6, is Soul on Fire, and this is a film by Athem Films. It has made $1.3 million and a total domestic of $5,541,483. So this sums up the total domestic box office for the top 10 films. top 10 films. So we move on from the domestic box office of North America to now the films performing at the global box office. So we start with the very first one, and Neza 2 still occupies the first position with $1,902,337,333. Still at number 2 is Lilo and Stitch with $1,037,450,363. And number three, still not changing, is a Minecraft movie with $957,949,195. And number 4 is Jurassic World Rebirth with $886,268,018. And number 5, we have Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yaiba, the movie Infinity Castle, with $659 million, and that is quite a big win for this particular movie. How to Train Your Dragon is at number 6 with $635,881,215. And at number 7, you have F1 the movie, the Brad Pitt starrer, is $629,327,111. And at number 8, we have Superman, which has made $615,984,465. Number 9, we have Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, making $598,767,057. And last but not the least, just talking about the top 10, we have the Fantastic Four First Steps with $521,854,182. So these are the top 10 results of the global box office. So all too soon, I've come to an end of this episode of the Film Mandate. Thanks so much for joining me for this exciting episode. Whatever your thoughts may be, whatever questions you may have, kindly leave it in the comment section below, and it will be very much appreciated. All the same, I'll be coming your way again tomorrow with another today with another live stream at 11:45 p.m. GMT. So watch out and join as we stream the hottest stories, both from the African front and the international scene. My name is Papa Otu, and this has been the Film Mandate. I'll see you soon.